All right, final predictions video. So I made kind of my usual film study preview, right after the Super Bowl was announced. But as I said, I wanted to go a lot. At the end of that video, I predicted the Chiefs to win, but I said, hey, I'm not married to that. I easily could see either happening. That's just my first reaction. And so after I've now basically spent 2 weeks doing nothing but preparing for this game, figuring out, looking at little details, which there's still so much I could look at, right? There's always so much, but I figured let's make another video, give my full, predictions and kind of expectations on what's going to happen. And also, again, because people love predictions. Predictions are fun, but I obviously acknowledge that like predictions are almost entirely guessing to some degree. You're making educated guesses. So also just previewing how I expect certain aspects to go and maybe where the game could be won or lost. What are the key spots? So yeah, let's just get into it. Starting off with this, so I gotta explain what you're looking at. If you watched some of my other videos, you saw I made I gave at the end of each video a plus or minus 5 for each video I made in terms of who I give the edge to. Now, it's not like, again, having a plus 5 special teams is not the same as having a plus 5 quarterback, obviously. It's just a way to kind of measure it. But yeah, these are my conclusions. I gave Mahomes plus 16 just kind of as a joke because it was currently, the Niners were, 16 overall in the standings at that point. So that's how I did that. But yeah, obviously, Mahomes is going to be the biggest factor in this game. He just is. He's the best player, most valuable player in football. There's no denying that, I don't think. And what he can bring to the table is massive. So yeah, a big deal there. And Kelsey and Mahomes' playmaking both are also pretty big factors here. Now, the reason why Kelsey is plus 5, because again, this is kind of how it matches up, not just how good the player is. Kelsey is plus 5 because the Niners have given up yards to tight ends this season. They just have. And there's been moments where when they, like Sam Laporta had a ton of yards against them. Trey McBride is an example I look at where he's kind of the Cardinals' main option, and he had a bunch of yards against did I say Niners? Cardinals' main option, and he's had a ton of yards against, against the Niners when they last played. So, there's some room for Kelsey to get some yards, and that's probably the biggest concern I would have. That and, him and Rashee Rice, both great against zone. The Niners like to play zone. That I think is interesting. Mahomes' playmaking, number 3 on the list. That's definitely something that it's Mahomes, so he's going to get his. I do feel like the nice thing for the 49ers is they at least have really athletic edge rushers who can chase him down. Chase Young, no pun intended, and then Nick Bosa. Say what you want about Chase Young, but this is actually a scenario where he could have an impact. It kind of is a good situation for him. Now, he has to come through, but it is a good situation for him. Then number 4 is the Reid-Nagy combo. So the offensive, coaching staff in general for the Kansas City Chiefs, you have to look at that as I gave it a slight edge to the Chiefs versus the 49ers because so here's my thought process here with all of this is, with Matt Nagy and Andy Reid, they like to typically kind of run these schemes designed to kind of fool teams when they're playing zone coverage, get guys open, and you don't really fool the 49ers. It doesn't really work. And while the Chiefs are still good enough at these concepts, I'll still give them a slight edge. I don't think it's a great matchup there, but I think it's still a slight edge, I would say. Talked about Rashee Rice already. The Chiefs running game is just not something I'm expecting much out of. Personally, I've been wrong before, and the Chiefs did have a great running game the last time these two teams played in the Super Bowl. So who knows? Maybe it's more scheme than players, but on paper, it's a pretty massive mismatch in San Francisco's favor. They have a really good front seven. And the Chiefs don't have a great offensive line, especially if Thuney is either out or playing through an injury, which is, those are the two options, right? So definitely there's some concern there. Also, the Chiefs' other receivers, they have guys that can mix and match for sure, so I still gave it a slight edge to Kansas City. But looking at that now, maybe that's not totally fair because I do feel like the 49ers, they have guys who can cover as well, depth-wise. And, I do think it's going to come down to, they have guys who can play their roles and be good in specific situations. But really, I kind of feel like it's going to rely on Mahomes, Kelsey, and Rice. That's what I'm expecting offensively. For the 49ers defense, I only made 3 videos on their defense. But again, a lot of the other videos still included their defense when talking about it. Nick Bosa, +5. I mean, it's just a huge mismatch. You got two not great tackles going up against one of the best edge rushers in football. That's a huge mismatch. Chase Young, who they added, this middle of the season, who people don't love, but I still feel like it's a mismatch. I still feel like he's better than Donovan Smith or Jawan Taylor, whoever he goes up against. I think Chase Young's been fine. He's not Nick Bosa, right? Who we thought he was going to be when he got drafted. That's kind of his biggest issue. So, but again, should have some favorable matchups and should be able to help run down Mahomes, like I talked about. And then Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw for the Niners they're great in any situation, but they could be great here as well, trying to cover up some of those over-the-middle routes that the Chiefs will try and run. So, yeah, that's the Chiefs offense against the 49ers defense. So my main predictions here are, I think Mahomes, Kelsey, and Rice should be able to move the ball effectively. I do foresee some stops in this game as well. Again, this Chiefs offense really, I feel like the only game they've really been they've had a few games here and there, I guess, that they've been dominant. The one that kind of jumps out, obviously, is that Buffalo game where both offenses were scoring at will, despite the not incredibly high total numbers from that game. If you watch the game, not very many possessions. So that's part of why. Both offenses were really moving the ball effectively. Again, Mahomes can get on runs like that. But so it's hard to ever say, that's why predictions are hard, right? Because on paper, it's there's some issues, right? Only Kelsey and Rice are the guys who are going to fully be able to be a problem. Well, that's concerning. Just cover those guys and you're good. Well, who knows? Maybe Justin Watson will have a good day and now all of a sudden you're screwed, which is totally possible. So, predictions are hard. I'm still expecting Mahomes to get his points, though. I'm still expecting them to make things work. But the question is, can it go off? I'd be surprised. I think it'll have probably better than last time they played in the Super Bowl, but probably not quite as in against the 49ers. Probably better than that Super Bowl, but maybe not quite as good as last year's Super Bowl is kind of how I view it. But okay, other side of the ball, I've separated them into 3 chunks now because there was a couple videos that were kind of both teams involved. So the ones at the top, 49ers, only one pure defensive video for the Chiefs, although, like I said, a lot of the offensive videos still include defense. Listen, offensive players get clicks. So if I make a, the Colton McKivitz video is different, but if I make a, Brandon Ayuk versus L'Jarius Sneed video, I'm using Brandon Ayuk as the thumbnail. That's what will get me more views, but I still want to talk about both. So, yeah. Anyway, going on to all these videos and how I feel about these players. Brock Purdy, I think is a good player. I do. I think Brock Purdy's a good quarterback. I get the critiques, and I don't think that they're unfair, but I still think he's a good quarterback. You got to hope he plays better, though, than he did in the first half of both previous games. You got to hope second half against Detroit, Brock Purdy shows up. I thought he was actually all right. Going back and rewatching that game a few times, I thought he played well in that game. Just too many mistakes early on. Not sure if you can. We might have to play better against Kansas City, I would say. But then there's just so many options sprinkled out, right? Like the George Kittle, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, Christian McCaffrey, Kyle Juszczyk, all these guys that are just so many different weapons. And again, it's going to come down to the coverage, right? Can Kansas City cover? I'm wondering, can L'Jarius Sneed shut down Brandon Ayuk on the outside? But even if he can, can Watson or whoever ends up, or Williams, whoever ends up covering Deebo, can they be able to cover him? I don't know. So that's just interesting to me. So again, it's great on great. It's the Super Bowl. I could see any scenario happening. I really could. Trent Williams is awesome. He's awesome. That's kind of my note there. Definitely Trent Williams, very good. Colton McKivitz is not so awesome. The right tackle who's definitely given up some pressure. He's not trash. He's not trash, but he's not great. And definitely a weak spot. So can George Karlaftis or Mike Dana or, Onwenu, can those guys come through and make plays? Absolutely possible. Then we have the going over to the KS versus SS. That is Kyle Shanahan versus Steve Spagnuolo. I actually gave the edge to Shanahan. Part of it might just be personnel based, but I do feel like Shanahan's scheme with how many, with the Juszczyk and Kittle thing. Both those guys can block, but also can then go run routes. Having them both on the field should make it so much easier for them to pick up blitzes, but then also be able to still run routes when they want to run routes. So I do think the advantage is actually Shanahan there on paper, but again, Spagnuolo is still going to get his. He's still going to get his pressures because he's really good at doing that. So finally, Chris Jones, I said +3 Chiefs, which might, feels a little low at you. Maybe it should have been more than just +3. I don't know. Again, it was an arbitrary 1 through 5 thing there, but there's some weak spots on the offensive line. I do think the 49ers should be able to handle it okay, but again, it's going to be an advantage to Kansas City. So, yeah, kind of final predictions on this. Again, I don't want to just say, who knows what can happen. Let's watch the Super Bowl and have fun, because that's not as fun of a video to watch, personally. While it is kind of true that who knows what's going to happen, predictions are fun as well. I feel like I feel similar to how I felt going into that Tampa Bay Super Bowl, of like, yes, Mahomes is awesome, but there's so many spots here where I'm like, yeah, that favors San Francisco. Yeah, that favors San Francisco. Yeah, that favors San Francisco. Now, I think the difference is I'm not expecting there to be such a mismatch like in that Super Bowl, seeing the Tampa Bay one. The trenches were a huge mismatch, and it really came through in that game. It's not the case here. Now, the trenches, the 49ers defensive line on the Chiefs offensive line is still a pretty big advantage, but the other way around, I think the Chiefs have an advantage. So that's kind of what makes things a little bit more even there. I'm not saying the Super Bowl will go the way Tampa Bay's would. I don't think that at all. I think just comparing the kind of the pregame stuff here. But my usual thought process is if it's close, I lean towards whichever quarterback is the best. That's kind of how I typically view these things. Last year, it was another one where, in fact, you can make the comparison with the Eagles last year and the Chiefs and then the 49ers this year of kind of similar things. It feels like the Eagles check more boxes than the Chiefs did last year, but weren't able to pull off the victory. That being said, again, it's a tricky situation. It is. Because on paper, I keep picking against the Kansas City Chiefs, and I feel kind of, silly for doing it. But, it's because I watched them play 17 times in the regular season, and they did not look great this regular season. They just didn't. And then the playoffs come around, and even in the playoffs, I feel like they've had some not ideal moments. But, again, they did dominate Miami, and then they, I thought we're the better team against Buffalo, even if it took a little bit of luck with the missed field goal. It also took a little bit of bad luck with the fumble at the goal line for that to get to that point. And then you think about the Ravens game again. Is it luck or is it skill getting the goal line fumble, right? I'll let you be the judge there. But that was definitely a competitive game at the very least, but they don't make the mistakes. They didn't beat themselves, and they keep finding ways to win. Why shouldn't they do that again here? But I just feel like, I don't know. So I think that the Chiefs' offense will work, but I don't think it'll be dominant. I don't think it's going to be scoring touchdowns every drive. I think it's going to be a good offense in this game. I don't know. Very good offense in this game against the 49ers defense. But I do think that there will be moments where the 49ers can get some stops. And I also think that I am kind of trusting the 49ers to be able to move the ball. I guess what it comes down to is, to me, it does kind of come down to Brock Purdy in a lot of ways, because we know Mahomes is going to be awesome. So it comes down to, what are we going to get out of Brock Purdy? Is Brock Purdy going to struggle and turn the ball over a couple times, in which case the Chiefs are going to win? If Brock Purdy can be the Brock Purdy we saw him be for, 16 games in the regular season, because he sat out a bit, maybe 15, I don't quite remember. I think it was 16. If he can be that guy, then, or second half against the Lions, Brock Purdy, I think I am expecting the 49ers to win. I can't pick. I think as much as I'm struggling here, you can see I'm struggling. It's a difficult decision. I think I'm still leaning San Francisco here. I just am. I'm not, it feels, it's tough. It's tough, and, part of me wants to pick the Chiefs just because I keep picking against them, but that's not how I do things. I pick what I actually think is going to happen, and then, that way, if I'm wrong, you get to make fun of me and have fun there. I think I'm still leaning San Francisco, though. I do. I think it's close. Whichever team is the underdog in, the Vegas line, I believe the 49ers have a couple points, then give me the Chiefs plus a couple points. That's how close I feel like it is, but as of right now, I gotta lean San Francisco. I just do. San Francisco's been the better team over the course of the season. Yes, the Chiefs have probably been the better team over the course of the past couple of weeks, but I'm going to assume that the first, out of the 19 games we've seen both these teams play, I'm going to assume that they matter. The earlier games matter as well. It's not just like it's a completely different team. Maybe I'm stupid. I don't know. But that's kind of how I view it. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.